Welcome, and thanks for these extra minutes it took us to start. But I want to welcome everybody who's here. We are in a very special moment. It's a milestone, it's a public presentation of a process of many of you being part of from the communities, from the institutions, and of course, from the team from Germany has been with us last 4 years, but also is part of a process that is taking place for more than 10 years in a very close relation. And we have special gratitude of the researchers from EFIT University and Hanover University who have taken the mountain and this territory as part of theirs. In this exercise, are trying to understand how to inhabit in a more sustainable fashion. And they bring a presentation of also pilot projects that it was giving priority and also has resources from the German government, and this allows us to meet and to get to see those results. But not to say that this is the end of something, but just to tell that this is the beginning of processes that are open not only in the learning that we have gathered from the communities, but also from the institutions to continue thinking about how to manage among all of us risk and how to do it in a very close relation where everybody understand the processes of mountains. I would like to start by greeting Alejandro Echeverri, who is the urban director. He's not going to be able
Buenos
to be with
días.
us today, but has been with us during all this process.
Buenos días. Queremos darles la bienvenida desde la Universidad de AFIT y desde el Centro de Estudios Urbanos y Ambientales Urban a este momento tan especial que es un punto muy bonito de un camino recorrido en relación con la gestión de riesgo, un trabajo que hemos desarrollado con un grupo de aliados extraordinarios. La historia empezó ya hace varios años con el proceso y el proyecto de rehabilitar la montaña con nuestro aliado Christian Wertmann y con su grupo de investigación. Y aquí estamos ya en el desarrollo del proyecto piloto Informal con una red de colaboradores y de participantes extraordinarias, de aliados de nuestros amigos de Alemania, de las comunidades de Bello Oriento, del gobierno municipal y obviamente dijéramos desde nuestro equipo y desde los equipos que han participado. Entonces pues queremos darle dijéramos la bienvenida y abrir el momento para la presentación y los diálogos que vienen más adelante.
I also would like to give the word to Andrea Richard, who is part of the Embassy of Germany in Colombia. As I mentioned, this has been part of a process and a very deep collaboration between the two countries. And I would also like to thank you for being here, because this cooperation has allowed us to converse and to think about territories. So I invite you there, please. Good morning and welcome from the Embassy of Germany. Unfortunately, the ambassador is in Berlin right now today, and she's not going to be able to make it today. But she says regards and greetings, and to me it's a very special pleasure to be here today. The bilateral relations between Germany and Colombia are also a story of the academic exchange of Senbolo and Caldas. And now, the academic exchange and scientific between Germany and Colombia, it's very important. For instance, our exchange academic program has very small excellent centers in the world. And here in Colombia, we have two, Capaz and Isimari. But this project to me is very special, very important, and very impressive. And what's the reason? This project saved lives. The project was able to combine top-notch technology with a close cooperation with the community and to create a system that works. I would like to thank all the people that work in this project, of course, all the scientists from Germany and Colombians, but also would like to thank everybody in the community that worked together with all the parties in this project. And of course, I would like to thank all the local authorities that made possible this project thanks to their cooperation. So now I just waiting for the presentation of the project, and I hope that this is just the beginning step, and that the system created could save lives for a long time. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Andrea. It's a pleasure to have you here. Now I'd like to give the floor to Christian Werman, and it's a pleasure to give the word because it's been years of friendship and being very close with the university, with Medellin. And when Andrea mentioned humble, I think those very deep relations of knowing and understanding the mountains and the territories have been of many years, of centuries. So I think today we honor those explorers and those people that have made feel the territory in other ways. Welcome. Welcome. Hello.
And that's all in Spanish. And I will continue in English. So if you need translation, I don't know if you got a headphone or out there, but my slides will be also in Spanish. So maybe you can understand something. So thank you. Muchas gracias for coming all today. It's an exciting moment for us because we have been working on this research project for now 3.5 years, and we will conclude it at the end of this year. And then we hope that it can continue in Colombia, in Medellin. And before I talk about the structure of today and what we are doing this morning, I want to also thank the different entities that are involved in the project. And without that, the project would have been impossible. Foremost, I want to thank the Centro de Estudios Urbam de la Universidad IAFIT. And maybe raise your hands who is from Urbam IAFIT, so you can see in the audience here. You are, okay. And I want to thank also all the organizaciones sociales y gremiales Colectivo Tempranos, Corporación Convivamos, Sociedad Colombiana de Geología, Red de Organizaciones de la Sociedad Civil de Bello Oriente, especialmente la Fundación Palomar, Asociación de Mujeres, Fundación Caminos, Fundación Solidaridad y Compromiso y empresas públicas de Medellín. Muchas gracias y entidades del gobierno municipal, incluyendo DAGRET, Departamento de Planeación, Secretaría de Infraestructura y Secretaría de Medio Ambiente, y especialmente a todas las personas de la comunidad de Bello Oriente. Muchas gracias. I would like, okay, this is not working. Okay, it's not advancing. I would like to show you a few slides in the beginning. If it works, yeah. There we are. And it's also a special moment because we have in a few weeks, we have the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. And there is a focus this year on one of the targets of the Sendai Agreement to focus on early warning systems worldwide. And there is the wish to substantially increase the availability of and access to multi-hazard early warning systems and disaster risk and information and assessments to people by 2030. Gutierrez even said, the UN secretary, that he wants to have access to all people on the planet to early warning systems in 5 years. So, of course, we all know we have to work on that, and this is a lofty goal, but our research project fits very much into that agenda. But the agenda of today is that we follow the four elements of early warning systems: conocimiento y análisis del riesgo, monitoreo y pronóstico, difusión de la alerta y capacidad de respuesta. So to all four areas, you will hear talks that last between 15 minutes, monitoreo about 30 minutes, then difusión de la alerta and reacción 10 minutes, and then we talk about transferencia of the system and a continuation. And in the end, we have a panel here in front with various actors in the project where we discuss the future and the transferability of this research project. What was the objective? There is, of course, the issue that we have many people in Medellin, around over 200,000, living in the risk of landslides. And we are looking at one pilot project, one community of 4,000 residents in Bello Oriente. Here you see all these areas are former landslides that happened in the area that our team recognized. And you see that people were already building in old landslides. So the risk is there. And for many people on the planet, in the age of climate change, there is the question, can you stay where you are, or do you have to leave? Or you say fight or flight. Our project sits in between. Our project doesn't say you have to stay there and we do everything that you can stay here. No, we're also not saying you have to leave tomorrow and leave your house because the risk is so high. We want to create with the early warning system a window where you save lives, but that's all you can do. When, for example, if a landslide comes, you will lose your house. But maybe the early warning project can help you to save your life. Our team consists of a German team and a Colombian team. From the German team, we have geoengineers. We have a company that focuses on landslide warning systems, environmental analysis, and remote sensing experts, and geoinformatics. And we have been coordinating as landscape architects this German team. And we work very, very closely with URBAM from the University EAFIT. And in the center is, of course, the pilot project community of Bello Oriente. And we have many Colombian partners that worked with us on this project. And I said many thanks already to the various actors that we are here and you can see here. And we are incredibly grateful that you were accompanying with us this process over the last 3.5 years. Thank you very much. The pilot project we selected out of 14 different sites together with the various agencies in Medellin, foremost Dagret, and decided to work in Bello Oriente. And one of the big reasons was that the community there really was interested into having this research project. The methodology is that we work as a living lab. So that means academics don't sit at their desks or do tests in their labs, but they go out into the real world and work on the complex problems that are in the real world and don't just come from a technical or just from a social or from a historical side, but try to have a very integrative approach that considers technical and social issues. And so a living lab also works and considers the people as who live there as experts as well, at the same level like a professor or some high-level training person, so they are all equal. The process was that we had 3 phases, starting in 2019 with the investigation of risk, and the second phase, the installation of the early warning system, and a third one where we tested and evaluated. And you see there was a 3-year project originally, but because of many reasons, it had to be extended. You all know this little virus here. This is a timeline from 2009 to 2021. This definitely slowed us down, and we could extend the funding from the German side for another year. But there was a time for almost 1.5 years where we could not visit Medellin because travel was not allowed. But we had fantastic partners and also our coordinators on the ground who you see in a minute, that helped us to survive this really, really tough moment. And we did then, here you see the faces. And what happened is, of course, it took longer than we expected. Also the installation of the system, there were also material shortages, you know, the chip shortage worldwide, etc. And so the evaluation phase is really short. And in the next 3 months, we are talking intensively to especially the DAGRED to continue the system after our funding has ended. We had many, many meetings. I will not, many meetings on the German side, in Colombia, workshops, meetings. Then there was the time where we could not come to Colombia. We had to do it all online, which was not easy with the community and hard for the community. 2021, then at the end, we could come again. We had intensified meetings in 2022. There are countless workshops, meetings that we had. And there are clearly, the concept will be explained by our next speakers, but there are a few questions that are 3 big questions that need to be resolved for the future, and we cannot solve them in this project. One is if this warning system will survive and last inside the dynamics of a community that is growing. Then one is, of course, is the early warning system useful for the prevention of disasters for Medellin? Is it useful to be continued and successful? And can it be financed? And then, of course, if that's the case, can it be replicated in other areas in Medellin, maybe in other areas of the Andes or worldwide? Okay, I will hand over and we'll start with the first presentation of the risk analysis. Okay.
A todas y a todos. Mi nombre es Marta Sapena y voy a presentar junto con mi compañero Moritz sobre el análisis de riesgo en la ciudad de Medellín y la evaluación de las amenazas de los antideslizamientos en el desestado. En este caso de conocer el territorio y analizar el riesgo.
And well, to let you know that this project is focused in 3 different scales. We make cities, neighborhood, and local in the Bello Oriente community. And we're going to start first with the analysis that we made at the city and neighborhood. First of all, we get data from land to analyze those areas of the city that are more vulnerable regarding landslides. We also have made estimates about the distribution of the population in the city, and we have analyzed the growth of Medellin in the last years. With all this information, we have made vulnerability and exposition risk analysis. First of all, what we wanted to do is to identify remotely all those areas of the city that are more vulnerable to a landslide. In Medellin City, we found different urban morphologies like vegetation, high buildings, low-high, very compact. They don't have any green areas, and also we have light and compact buildings that are more vulnerable when there's a landslide. The idea is to be able to identify those areas in the Medellin city to see where we need to pay attention. To this, we use satellite images and we classify the cities in different urban topologies. And as you can see, it's very diverse. They have more industrialized, commercial, high buildings, but our interest is in those areas with light materials. And we quantified that about 37.5% of the Medellin city has this type of constructions, which is a lot. We also use data from the population census with cartographic information about the buildings, heights, uses of the soil to make an estimate of the density of population. In this 3D map, blue colored, they indicate the areas that are highly populated, and you see that the north area of the city has a high density of population. And for you to see an example of the precision of our data, we have estimate of population per building. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to analyze how the exposition of vulnerable population has evolved regarding landslide risk. We have combined information about the growth of the city since 1994, and we were able to quantify that there was a growth of 50%, which means that the city is growing fastly. We combine this information with information about the most vulnerable areas and estimated population and the map of threats. And what we did, we quantified the evolution of the exposition of population. You can see how this has been evolving, the growth from 1984 to 2018 at 13% of the population is now in areas that are exposed to landslides. And if we look into detail, those exposed areas, we can see how more than 81% of population also lives in vulnerable areas. And this means that the exposition to that risk is growing, but in very vulnerable areas. We have also made analysis scale per neighborhood, and we get high resolution data. We have the estimates of population per construction and their exposition and vulnerability, and we can add the information per neighborhood and observe which are the neighborhoods that we need to worry the most, because there are more people exposed to this risk. And as you can see, these neighborhoods are in the north, east, and northwest area, where we have those very vulnerable constructions. This tells us that the most exposed areas are the most vulnerable ones. Also, we have analyzed the growth of the city in the last 5 years with satellite images, and we have added this information per neighborhood, and we can observe that the most exposed and vulnerable neighbors are the ones that are growing the fastest. This makes that the risk is higher. So also an observation that we made in these last 5 years, more than 10% of the growth has happened in high-risk areas. So now we're going to see the Bello Oriente case, the analysis of risk at the local scale are corners from the Munich University that generated high precision and estimate the population that is being used to make this analysis of exposition at the neighborhood level and to support the alert system and evacuation routes. So now I'll give you the mic. I apologize, but I have to speak in English.
So to investigate the local hazard on site in Bello Oriente, we use different methods, and we try to always incorporate the community into these methods. So as you can see here, we did mapping together with the community also, always in order to exchange also on the local hazards and the landslide that already occurred there. And also we did geophysical studies to get an indirect investigation of the subsurface. And also there we worked together with the community, and they helped us there. And to complement this, we did drillings, 4 drillings of up to 50 meters. And as you can see, it was quite a challenge to do these drillings up there. Here you can see some results of these methods. So we have landslide maps which show the historic landslides that have happened in Bello Oriente. You already saw that in Christian's slide earlier. And a geophysical profile here of the subsurface. And we have here some drilling cores of one drilling of 30 meters and one of 50 meters, which helped us to analyze this indirect study of the geophysical measurement. These methods from the on-site investigations we complemented with numerical analysis. So we used a limit equilibrium model, a quite simple numerical model for two reasons. First, in order to investigate the local parameters on site. So we did a back analysis of historic landslides and used this to get first geotechnical parameters. And also we used it, so you can see a example profile here. We used this to investigate how the landslide sizes can be in each area in the barrio. So we can get like these medium landslides here, and also we can get a very large landslide. And this obviously depends on the trigger and on the local mechanical properties of the ground. So, and these kind of scenarios we then later used in the hazard analysis, because we used those scenarios that we can also find in the historic landslides to get also a frequency of event, more or less. Here are some results of our investigations. So here you can see the geological map of Bay Oriente. And as you can see, it's quite detailed. It has the rock on the side of the barrio here and on some ridges here. And on top of the rock we have the saprolite, which has not been moved yet. But large parts of the barrio are comprised of the colluvium. So this is material that has already been moved. And it is a little bit different in each part. And sometimes it's matrix dominated and sometimes it's block dominated. But it shows us that there's a high landslide hazard all over the barrio, because everywhere we already see that the ground has moved before. This is a map that shows the depth of the colluvium. So you can see that in this area we have a very deep colluvium depth, and this also gives us a hint that maybe in this area we can expect deeper landslides. I'm not going to go into detail about this, but this is a structural map which shows the major faults in the area, and we did this using a hillshade analysis and also on-site scan line analysis, and this also helps us to interpret the geophysical analysis. This is again the landslide map. So again, the map of the historic landslides, which I showed before. And so we used all of this information that I just showed to get basically in the end a hazard map of different scenarios, a 30-year, a 100-year, and a residual year event. And this is the hazard map we came up with. As you can see, it's very red. It shows a very high hazard for basically the whole upper part in Bay Oriente. And yeah, so Marta will now go into detail what this means for the population. But yeah, as you can see, this is a quite hazardous area. So, yeah.
Thanks, Maurice. So this is the hazardous map that we use for our authorities, local studies.
I wanted to add also that also the risk studies, the results of the risk studies were always communicated with the community, and also what's reflected also back from the community. So there were many workshops on this from our Colombian partners, and they showed, for example, examples of the drill core and also some other parts of the risk study or of the hazard study that I just showed. And this was shared with the community, but also the community could share some insights on their perception of the risk or the hazard on site. So, thank you.
During the project, we use a drone, and with this information, we generate very precise maps of satellite images, aerial images, and with that, we generated 3D models that allowed us to generate a lot of cartography of high resolution. We had all the buildings, the typology, the height level. We classified the roads in different typologies that is essential for the evacuation routes. and we have a lot of information, detailed information for the study area. With this information, together with surveys that we did, we estimate locally the population in this area because we have statistics of people per household in the interesting area. So we show, for example, the density population per building. That's essential information for maps of threats. We have more than 4,600 people in this area, so we combined this detailed information about the population with the threat maps generated by the Munich University, and as you can see, most of the area at the soccer field it's more than 1,800 people that are at risk. They are in a very high risk area. So also we have multi-sample information. This allows us how, in this case of Bello Oriente, how fast has growth. And we see is that the growth has been constant, about 7% every year. That means, for example, that by 2021 we found 75 new houses built in just 1 year. And it's interesting that 40% of this growth has taken place in the rural area. And 42% of the new constructions were built in high-risk areas. So this means that in the case of Bello Oriente, this growth is very important because the area that is free to build is exactly in the area where there's the highest risks. And just to finish, 3 things I want to mention. It's that our analysis tells us 1 out of 10 people in Medellin live in landlides areas. That's about 235,000 people that are vulnerable to landslides. Also, the analysis in situ, the geological and geotechnical, has showed that superficial landslides are the highest threats in Bello Oriente, and it's important to mention that the early sensors were distributed taking into account this information. The early alarm system could improve the resilience of 1,800 people that are the ones that are in those high threat areas. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is John Singer, and this is my colleague David Serron. We will present to you the monitoring system that we have developed to address the risk in Bello Oriente, the landslide risk in Bello Oriente. So what we will be talking about, sorry, it doesn't work. So what we will be talking about is the second column of the early warning system, which is the monitoring and the prognosis of an event. So this map you have seen already several times in the presentation. These are the recent landslides or the historical landslide that have been identified in Bello Oriente. And obviously what we want to do with the warning system or with the sensor system is detect these landslides. These landslides are in size, are small to medium if we use an international classification standard. And they have a high hazard, or the highest hazard is when they have a long run out, which means they initiate in areas above the population and then they accelerate very fast and run into the populated area. And this obviously, these high velocity events are the ones which are the highest danger to lives. So they threaten lives mostly. So that's why we also concentrate on the upper part of the slope. So these landslides usually are triggered from rainfall, from an increase of groundwater levels, which is initiated by the rainfall. And this increase in groundwater levels initiates the landslides, which usually start with a slow movement, and with time they accelerate. And this is what we are looking for, this initial signals, which is the increase in groundwater level, and also these slow movements before a catastrophic event. So that is the signals that we want to detect with our sensor system. So the big problem with this is that we do not know where a landslide might happen. So we have to cover the whole area with observations. We cannot focus on a small area because we do not know where things will happen. So really, the requirement of the system is that we have a coverage of the whole area. We need a high spatial density because the events can be very small. And we also need a high temporal density of observations because the system reacts very quick. After rainfall, it might even only be hours until we have an onset of a landslide. So we need to have information every half hour, every 5 minutes, maybe even. So we have a very high requirement concerning what we need in terms of data. And at the same time, obviously, the system should be cheap, as always. We don't have money, and it should be easy to operate. So based on these requirements, we try to come up with the best possible system. We put a lot of thought into it, and this is what we now have in Bello Oriente and also have implemented now in Bello Oriente. So the sensor system really consists of four main parts. The first one being the so-called CSM, Continuous Share Monitor System, which is combined with extensometers. As you can see here, the system is actually quite simple. We lay cables into trenches which cross along the slope, and we have a special system which can detect if these cables are deformed. So when the landslide starts to move, these cables are deformed, and we can detect that with a special system. And we can not only detect that something is moving, but we also can detect exactly where it is moving. It has a spatial density or spatial resolution of 2 millimeters, the system. The second system, which we use to fill the gaps between these lines, which we have from the TDR, so you see all the green points here, these are the second system, which is a wireless geosensor network, which consists of these small boxes, which we mostly attach just to houses, and they include a very accurate inclination sensor. And so if something starts to move slowly, we can detect it with these boxes. All the data is transferred via a system, a wireless system, which is called LoRa, long range. But as it is also the name for a parrot in Spanish, this has now been our logo for this system. If we are in areas where we don't have houses, we build the sensors into these small columns, and some of these columns have sensors attached into the ground because we also want to have information about the groundwater level. You can see actually the sensors here up front, and later after the presentation, I'd be happy to explain it to you a little more in detail. Obviously, we not only need information about the surface and the uppermost layers of the ground, we also need information about the deeper underground. So we also did drillings into the deeper subsurface, and also in these deep drillings, which are up to 50 meters deep, we have deformation and groundwater level sensors. This is a photo of the drillings. Obviously, it's the same drillings that we did for the geological reconnaissance. And then finally, all this data that we produce with the sensors has to be managed and analyzed. So we have a cloud-based system to do that. Just want to have a quick look also again on this LoRa system. This is really a new development. This has really been designed from scratch in this project. So the electronics of these LoRa nodes, of this LoRa system, they are really cheap. We focused on mass-produced electronics. So we have a price of about 250 euros is 100,000, a million. Okay, sorry, pesos. These are the subsurface nodes, which are the sensors which go below ground. And all the parts that have to be designed specifically have been designed using 3D printing, so that way it's easy to reproduce. All of this we developed as open source. We will supply the 3D models, all the lists, the material lists, the circuit diagrams, and we have step-by-step instructions. All of this will be publicized, so anyone in the whole world can reproduce the system. So let's focus now on Bello Oriente and the way we have implemented in Bello Oriente. You can see here that the red line, the yellow line, sorry, are the TDR or CSM system, so the cables. And then you see all these dots. these are all the different LoRa's and INCLIs. Sorry, I forgot to mention before that the sensors which have the subsurface part, the subsurface probe, we call INCLI. So all these different symbols are the LoRa's and the INCLIs, and you can see we really reached quite an impressive density of the system. And but obviously we cannot just place the sensors anywhere. We have to have a system behind it, and the first one is that we try to do the density of the sensors is controlled by the risk. So where we have high risk, we have a lot of sensors. Where we have little risk, we have less sensors. And yeah, and then at the same time, we have to, at each and every separate location where we place a sensor, we have to be really sure that the sensor actually reacts to a landslide. So it's a quite an laborious task to install these sensors still. So what we have right now are 70 LoRa's, 45 INCLIs, 3 central stations which collect the data, 1,100 meters of cables, and 4 deep drillings. But even with this impressive amount of information and data, we cannot reduce the risk entirely. We have to be 100% clear about that. There are gaps in the system. There are limits to the system. So we can't detect events which have a very low intensity, which have a low probability, because we focus, the distribution of the sensors is defined by risk. So these cases, we have, in these areas, we have low, a low amount of sensors usually. And if a landslide hits between sensors, obviously we can also not detect it. And if we have landslides which initiate without the described precursors, without a slow movement beforehand, this would be especially landslides which have been initiated by an earthquake, we cannot give a pre-warning. We can detect them, but we can only see them when they already are happening. Okay, so you've seen the map now of the sensors, and I would hand over now to David, who will show you the installation process.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Hi, I've been working in the geological and technological area. We can use temporary line, and we have a geologic information about the system. And based on that, we have input based on the geology, based on the software and the hardware that was generated in the project, and we took all those concepts and we take it to the field. The task described, we have 4 challenges, and was to install those sensors, and they have different versions. We started with the CSM or TDR system. It's basically a cable that is connected horizontally with an extensometer cable, and it's simple. We just make gap, and we installed distributed geographically and embedded in sandy and cement. And the challenge that we have was that during the installation, it has about 1.5 kilometers, and is divided in 2 sectors. These sectors are separated horizontally. So the biggest challenge that we have with the ditch was we have to drill about 7,000 inches of rock. That's about 1.7 kilometers of rock perforated. We hired the community, and that was a fundamental part of the work. And we have to do works at the upper part where the access was very complicated. We have to build mules to transport. Other sensors that we have here is the one I mentioned, are the LoRa. Those LoRa's, the installation has 3 processes. The first one, initially, it has to go to the house and talk to people and tell them about the importance of monitoring the house. Once we have the approval of the installation, the architecture of the landscape adapted with the logo that we mentioned, which is LoRa, and then the installation is go to the location, anchor the sensor, and once anchored, we calibrate the sensor with the wall, and we update the system that was created in the system, which is software. When we have the software updated, we calibrate reference measure, which is the one that we're going to have, and we start getting data from it with LoRa. Another sensor that we have installed is the Inkly, which is the one that you see on the table, and it has 3 installation times. How can I change that? So the first part is that we have to make a perforation. This is one that we have, which is a manual perforation. I need to have metallic pipe. We heat it until we have about 1.5 meters. Once we get this data, we start to do the installation process. On the left, you see the sensor, which is the same one that is on the table. We make the installation. The pipeline is perforated to be able to read hydrostatic pressure, which is the blue sensor, and then we installed the node, which is the box, which is the one that you see here on the table, which is the one in charge of remotely communicating with the system. So we update the code, and finally we label the sensor and the protection structure, which is the one that you see on the right. The system is supported in 3 main stations. Each has a different complexity, technology, and construction. So we have on the left gateway A, gateway B, and gateway C on the right. Those devices, they have the purpose of remotely communicating with the sensors. We have communication up to 7 kilometers of distance, as long as we have direct visualization with the structures that are the central basis of the project. Also take into account that it's an open source project. Everything that we've talked, that we have described it briefly, is being described in manuals that graphically explain all the instructions, the step-by-step of all the activities. On your left, you see the manual that tells us step-by-step how to install the sensor in the center, how to install the cables, and on the right, how to make the construction of the monitor boxes. We're going to continue here with John.
Okay, thank you, David. I think you have seen that the installation process was a lot of work, and obviously we came up in Germany with a lot of ideas, and David had also always to implement it. So a great shout out to David for the great work he has done here. So now we have collected a lot of data, or we have a lot of sensors, we collect a lot of data. So what do we do with the data? That's now the next slides, what I want to give you a real quick impression of what we plan to do. So we have a lot of sensors, and we will see every once in a while that in some sensor we see a reaction. So we see, for instance, an increase in inclination, or we see a deformation in the TDR. If we have a singular sensor which reacts, like in this case, it's one here, and they don't seem to have a direct connection because we have a line in between which doesn't react, then this is a signal that we cannot react to immediately. We have to look at it first. This expert has to look at the data, and maybe we even have to go on site to check what's going on. Only if we have a reaction of several sensors in the same area, and also ideally across different systems, then we can react automatically. We can really be sure that something is going on. So this is called sensor fusion. So we use the information of several different sensors to get a better picture of what's going on. And obviously, we not only look at the spatial distribution of the sensors, but also of the different types of sensors, as I've said before, because we're looking at the whole trigger mechanism. So we look at the rainfall, which we have here in the blue bars. This is the time, and so we have the rainfall, different rainfall events to which the blue line, which is the groundwater level, reacts to, and in the end, on the soil movement is the red line, which will react to the groundwater level. So by looking at all 3 of these data sets, we can issue warnings not only based on the deformation, but also previously based on, for instance, the groundwater levels. So we can very early already say, oh, we see an increase in groundwater level. This might be dangerous before even the soil starts to move maybe. But obviously, We only notify the public maybe if we already have a very strong groundwater level rise, which we think is very dangerous, or if there is a first indication of movement. And obviously, we would only issue an alarm or an evacuation if we see fast increase in movements, which really indicate that there will be an emergency situation. So the main thing about looking at all three parameters is that we get more time. We have more pre-warning time. But the really important part about this is that we have to understand the relation between rainfall, groundwater level rise, and deformation. And this will vary throughout the slope. This will be different at different parts of the slope. And for that, we look at the data that we collect. So we do time series analysis, but we also use geological models, which we simulate the reaction of the slope to get this interaction. And we think we can offer a pre-warning time of hours to days if we can follow this system here. And what's really special about our system is that we have this high spatial characterization, so we can really give a localized warning. We can say in this area something is happening. So I've said before, this data has to be processed. We have two systems, one which manages the sensor, which is open source, and the second one, which is the Algerisk online system, which does a data analysis. This has also been developed by my company. This is for the experts. So this is where all the data is analyzed and processed. For the public, we have an app developed where all the data, all the information that the system produces is disseminated via the app. And at the same time, you can use the app to give information back. So if you see a crack, if you notice something, or if we give a notice something is going on in this area, we can get a report back from the public, from the community to tell us if actually something is going on. And so this already indicates that we've spoken a lot about the technical part of the monitoring, but we really strongly feel in this project that the best sensors actually we have are the people on site. If they are trained, if they know what to do, they can actually themselves report a lot of these instances much better than maybe any sensor can. So it's really important to train the people to understand the processes of landslides and also how to do some simple measurements, like a very simple crack meter based off a wooden construction if they notice something like that. So that's really a very important part of monitoring, is also to have the people understand what's going on. So I want to conclude now with some first findings. Right now we think, or we are sure that we can have the system fully operational in October. It took us much longer than we thought for various reasons, but we are very happy to have it running now. If you look at the cable installation of the continuous share monitor, David has explained it was very hard to do. It was a lot of work. It was much more difficult than we thought it was from our experience from Germany. We translated it to Colombia, but obviously you can translate it one-to-one. So we think it's a great system because you have this high spatial density, but it should be combined, or it's most easy to integrate if you put it together into the ground with other groundwork. So for instance, if you lay a water line or some sewage canal, then you can put the cable in it doing the construction work only once. So that would increase the efficiency of this part of the system very much. And then obviously we have the LoRa and INCLI system, which we think is great. It's easy to replicate, it's easy to build, it's very cheap. You can even install them within a couple of days. You can install a small system very quickly. So we think this is the system really which is very easy to replicate. So with this photo also, I want to shout out and say thank you to the people of Bello Oriente, from the small children who helped us, to the people, the men and women of the community to help us work on the system with David together. Really was a great collaboration. I love Bello Oriente, and I'm really sad that we are leaving now. Okay, thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lisa Seiler. I am from Leibniz University of Hanover, from the Department of Landscape Architecture and Design. And today I want to present now the technical system that was just presented, how we integrated it into the landscape of the barrio, in the neighborhood of the barrio, and in the public space. Like this. So the main idea of integrating our sensors into the neighborhood life was first, of course, to avoid them to be just technical and foreign element, but yeah, visible and functional, but also informative element. So in our project, we wanted to find out how public space design can support disaster risk management. So our goal was also to, of course, protect the sensor system, but at the same time, make it visible and raise the understanding and also the awareness on landslide risk. So for the design process, it was very important to stay in continuously contact with the people. Our team, like you can see on the left, went from door to door to inform people, to discuss sensor locations. Also, the community workshops that we did had several risk management related topics, and also different activities with models and games, and that really helped us going on in the whole design process. Then here you can see we invented characters to explain all relevant information. So some of the technical elements that John just described have been personalized to simplify their functions. For example, Inkly, the inclinometer. Then we have, in the Earth, we have Don Cable Extensor, the CSM extensometer cable. Of course, the siren. And already mentioned Laura, the parrot, as an impersonation of the infrastructure nodes we have. And of course, the technical name is also Laura. So it's a really nice and funny coincidence. And we used all of our drawings also on flyers, posters, stickers. We also did T-shirts with it so that we are recognized in the barrio when we are there. And also from the beginning, there was a WhatsApp group. So we could stay in continuously contact with the people. Yeah, coming to the socio-spatial analysis. Together with people from the community, we mapped the whole upper part of Belo Oriente. Through this analysis, we could get a first understanding of places, streets, and buildings that are important for the neighborhood life. Also, we could use it as a base to find suitable locations for the spatial integration of our system. Additionally, we made detailed studies of the terrain and the existing path system, and its material, the slope angles, and this also served as a base for defining the evacuation system that will be presented later. So this analysis led us to the general idea to define different formations for our sensor protections. So beginning from the left for very dense populated places that are very important for social interacting, we planned benches as small meeting places that also should protect the sensors. The same we did for less populated places, the so-called medium design where we have small seats. And for not populated areas, we thought about a very simple protection as pipes that are also very low cost. And additional to that, we planned markings to markers, for example, for the cables and the LoRa's. So the overall map shows that our sensors are kind of, or interventions are spread all over the barrio, and that the tubes in yellow are more away from the urban life, and the benches and the small benches are near the houses. So now I will go to all the different interventions in detail. Out of the 3 gateways, Gateway B is located near one street in the upper part of the barrio. And it is designed as a large bench with an information sign that is showing information about the whole system. And we used bricks as a main material for all our interventions. Then the brick bench functions as a meeting space for the people, also as a protection, of course, for the technical elements of the LoRa gateway. And an information sign in the back is combined with the steel structure that holds an antenna and the solar panel. So the LoRa character also sits on top, as you can see, as an additional recognition feature. So the sign explains each sensor and also shows that the community is part of the monitoring. And it also has a map with all the sensor locations. So it has an informational, but also an educational part to support risk management. So we located another 5 benches as suitable places and either have a great view, are located to near small shops. And to first interviews, we know that in the night, people also fear that wrong person could sit there, leave their trash there, but on the other hand, that it could have a very positive effect on their local business, for example. Then next to these benches, we plant small gardens that neighbors could take care of to raise responsibility for these places. So you can see that people are already occupying or using these places, for example, here with their own variation of a garden, or kids that are using it as a playground. Then the other subsurface probes near to pathways that we protected with the so-called medium design protection is a small seat. We have it in all different altitudes of the neighborhood. Then all our ground center protections I have shown so far are painted with 4 main colors. We also used in all our graphics. And we added inscriptions which explain what is inside, like here you can see I am Inkly, I am a sensor that feels the movements in the ground. And each sensor got also an ID to be identified, and also we created icons that for each different sensors, and it matches with the app, and it matches also with the map that we have on the signs. With a sticker, we added the same information I just mentioned also onto the pipes. As already shown and already explained, LoRa impersonates the infrastructure nodes, and this is a selection of 70 LoRas you find spread all over the barrio. And most people like the character and agreed that we could paint it on their houses. And I think it's a very playful and memorable way to explain the LoRa. Then as the cables near to the streets are quite vulnerable to external disturbances like building new houses, building activities, etc. Our goal with marking the cable was also to protect it. So we placed information signs all over the barrio, and here you can see a special version that is located in front of the former landslide of 2017. It tells the story of how and why the landslide happened. So it is a reminder outside on what happened next door And we hope this elements also raises awareness for landslide and how to prepare for it. So another information media about the project was initiated by people of the community. Here you can see one example of 2 murals that are already in the barrio that shows what is the project about. So what we have learned so far. So we saw that benches are already used by the people living nearby, so that the combination of benches and detailed information with signs seem to work best for people's understanding of the system. Also, of course, we don't know how long the materials, the paintings, and the information will last. So it's uncertain how long it will do. Then, the long-term maintenance is also a requirement. We hope that or already worked and talked with people that already care for it, but of course also we need the help of the institutions there. Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning. Once again, thanks for being here. Now we're going to concentrate on the spread word of the alert. Can you click on it, please? So this component, as Christian mentioned, is another one of the very important of early alert, where we do not stop repeating that people are the most important part of the system. Not only people that are at risk, but also the people that do each of these actions from the territory or from outside the territory. So regarding to the type of warning, to us was very important to repeat that the first alert level, one of the most important of all, is what to do before a landslide starts. So that preventive alert, when there's not a change in the mountain, but that there is a lot of actions that you can actually do and alerts happens regarding how we can avoid this. And during, so once the landslide starts, we present 3 alerts that we're going to detail that are called alarm, alerts, and notice, with different colors that can indicate what is the level. And then we have the attention phase. So to us, it's always that participatory process. Not only how the community risk, but also with other colleagues from the Teherañas collective that has always been there and has been essential in all that process of building. The community processes as well, they give us a lot of alerts that helps us to adapt to the conditions. Our colleagues from DECREC and many others that have been involved in. And also, I would like to thank the pandemic. To us, the pandemic was a shock, but it was also a great blessing because it allows us to integrate 2 people who have been essential in the process, Julian Castañeda and David. You saw David already. They have contributed an element for the project that is that natural transdisciplinary. We have an environmental engineer, geological engineer that they not call different frontiers. They are also volunteers of the Geology Society of Colombia. Going back to the alert levels, this chart that we of course know you cannot read, but to represent a little bit what our alert levels have. Our alert level starts with before, during, and after, the type of alert, the characteristic of the rain, and here we integrate 2 fundamental parts, the qualitative and the quantitative. Also, for the signals of the behavior, the mountain, qualitative and the quantitative, that is given by our sensors that were already explained. And it's paramount always to make focus levels are gradual. We need a lot of different signals to be able to move to the next level. Also, we have the actions of the main to involve actors, the community, that Greg and others like Ambag or Antioquia, etc. And one of the key messages is the message for the red calls and the chapter project to avoid that behavior. For instance, in the stable point, we don't have rain or light rain, white clouds, the mantle stable, no movement. So once we have more information, we will put this. But then in these, before the action is to prevent, observe, revise, check. And a very key one is to report also to eliminate leaks, because all the leaks that happens in those areas, all of them, they have a big component of the water. It's what we call social-natural. Other actions from Ambag and Antioquia, and the messages are very clear, no novelty. For the alert, the orange, we have rain, middle drops, the sky is gray, thunder and lightning. For the rain, we're going to have the valleys, the qualitative level. There's movements, cracks on certain areas. And then we talk about prepare, take pictures, send messages, communicate, pay attention to the app, and be ready to evacuate if we go to the red level. We're going to the communication mechanisms. We have a redundant. We need to make sure that the message is delivered, being as clear as possible. So we have different methods. For example, in WhatsApp groups, we have a group that is being specifically created for the project, but also we participate in other groups of the neighborhood to be able to share information as well. Not only to provide the alerts during, but also we have two examples of our Tejerañas partners that help us provide information, tips about the weather, about events that are taking place in the city. And also, here we see an image of a very strong rain that is coming to the neighborhood, and they inform the community to be ready. Another communication is the sirens and the sound system that is located into part of the neighborhood to be able to cover as many people as possible. The other one is the app that Heike is going to tell us a little bit about it, to push up messages. And finally, the door by door. So we combine all the technical and social components. And to give the word to Heike, so we have big questions to answer. First one is when to evacuate. So that question is still a mystery to us, taking into account that most of the slides in the area start slowly. Another big questions that we have for our colleagues to the government is how we're going to integrate to the system the official protocols of risk management in Medellin. And finally, who is responsible to share their alerts. If we don't wait to receive that official, but inside the community, they're trained. But of course, to be able to activate the system of reaction, we need to define. Okay, while we wait to solve this technical issue, I would like to invite you that when you're finished, come here, touch, see. Of course, as John mentioned, all these plastic elements were 3D printed to be able to replicate it easily. So you can see all these sensors. And we have here Laura. Okay, now go ahead.
So sorry for the interruption. I will continue with the functions of the smartphone application, which we developed to strengthen the participation of the community and to enhance local capacities in risk management. The app does not only provide dissemination of warnings, it also integrates other functions of the warning system, like knowledge about risk and possibilities of monitoring. The app is designed very easy. We have just 5 buttons with very simple logos, and there's general information about the project and its goals, and the same characters like people know from the outside information with the inform at risk family that is used there again. Then we have a basic weather forecast to raise awareness for the rainfall as a very important trigger for landslide. And this weather data is still taken from Google, but in future it would be really nice if we could have more specific data, for example, from a local weather station. Then we have the very important function on the top. The big colored button is showing the current state of warning, and the color corresponds with the colors Carolina has shown before of the different warning levels. Besides the general information about the meeting points, the evacuation routes, and photos that can be shown by users, it provides detailed information about the current state of warning and gives advice on appropriate actions in case of emergency. For example, to stay calm and to keep essentials on hand when evacuation would be necessary. Also, the app is able to provide push-up messages, so users are not required to check the app all the time. So then to provide some transparency to the people, you can see all different sensors and their activities on the app as well. That might be interesting. For example, when you have a sensor on your house and you want to see what is going on. It's not directly related to warnings, it's just the activities of sensor. And you can filter this different sensor types as well. So this was already explained. We have a very important function complementing the sensor data. The app is wants to reinforce people to report their own observations of the, for example, changes of the development of the surface, like cracks or anything. You can report here. You can report here with the camera function your observations. You can upload pictures, and you can also watch the gallery. The pictures can be directly connected to the GPS data. So the app also has the data of the user. So in case you have questions, you can ask back. So we started with small workshops in April with a limited number of people from the community to test the basic functions of the app. Now that the sensors are working, we will have more workshops till the end of the year. And so far, not many people have installed the app. Someone from the Colombian team will go around from door to door and explain how to install the app and promote its use. We have a simple QR code which can be scanned, or you can also download it from the App Store by just typing inform at risk. For the conclusion, we see a high potential in the app as an instrument for the community which have a great local expertise on the terrain. But still, for the youth, more social work will be important to really promote and further develop the app in its daily use. And a real challenge is the lack of internet in the area. So there would be a higher impact if there would be free Wi-Fi in the barrio. Thank you.
Okay, and while Isa has the last component of the system is reaction, the capacity of response. These development, this component makes no sense if we don't develop the other ones. The early alert system, every component is essential and is very separated from the others. So to start, to be able to define the evacuation routes, we use all that technical study, all that definition of the threat map to identify what are the stable areas, what the territory was big, we have to subdivide it in other areas. So we have to use geomorphological studies or geodynamics independently. So this division allows us to indicate what are the areas of the territory that behave uniformly. So this landslide can actually affect this area, but it's not going to affect this area. So that's how we define our 5 gathering points and safety areas. And also our partners use all the remote sensors to be able to estimate how many people could actually we expect in each location spot. For a total of 2,532 people located in the high-risk area that could go into those location spots, safety spot. Always, it was very important working with the community. And one of the constant things during our gathering with the communities in the last year was always to make a simulation of an emergency. It's basically a reaction theoretical exercises where we change elements. So what we do is during the day. What happens if there is a dive? What happens in the weekend? If it's raining or if it's not raining? If there are people with disabilities, so we provide different scenarios, and among all of us, we debate it in a close area. Then another important thing is to improve the reaction is to make a simulation. We have the supported background that has several experiences in simulations, but we started from zero because we never have community simulations regarding that. So we don't have any line to follow, but it was so we see that first part to check the evacuation routes where our colleagues from firefighters, etc. So we define we're going to divide in 3 sectors to different people that are going to support the simulations come here. So outside people as people from the community. Being the first one, we need to announce that so people know and they're not going to be so we use the sound system to remind people about it. We gave flyers about the project for these mock-up alerts, and we have logistic support from multiple entities because it was the first time of all. So we have a lot of support from our partners from the projects, we have volunteers from the Red Cross, from different professions, from EPM, etc. And we allocate to each of these person to a sector, and to start the evacuation, we gave a message by one of the community leaders.
Buenos días.
Good morning.
Esto es un simulacro de
This is
evacuación
an evacuation
entre
mock-up.
deslizamiento de tierra o derrumbe que en cualquier.
So as you can see, that was very real. We were very anxious because it rained all night and only stopped raining 3 minutes before the alarm. So everything was wet. Some paths are open, so the possibility of falling was high. So we were in a very tense. Fortunately, nothing bad happened. The only surprise we had was a woman, and she didn't know anything about it, and she took everything and just ran down the hill. And she didn't fall down, but we talked to her and everybody from the evacuation route. She told us, I was in Salgard. I was in the landslide of Salgard, so I know what this is about. So that was like a very interesting thing of the exercise, understanding it. So we have more than 100 people evacuating. That for being a first mocap simulation and evacuation, I think was very positive. We accomplished something very important, which is the main that a lot of people get to know about it. It was very common. They were walking and people were like in the house. Hey, hi. Oh, is that the simulation? Okay, come on. No, thank you. I have something on the oven. So I was keen for them to know what's happening. After the mockup, it's the evaluation of what happened about that, what we did well, what we need to improve, we need to take into account. That was something to be able to identify. There's some locations of the neighborhood with the sound system is not heard. Hey, we need another sound system. And we clarified what is not possible. We didn't have more resources. And it was part of a collective process. So we were inviting the community. Okay, how can we announce that in that area? So maybe we can use the whistles, the lever. So it's also not generating dependency of an outside system, but actually to generate that appropriation and that cool responsibility. And something that has been essential in all the process is generating spaces to build trust and respect through hearing and sharing. Sharing a sancocho, sharing a dance, sharing a cup of coffee, and sharing a beer. So all those moments, we get to know about a couple of things that you cannot know in the day-to-day. So those spaces are very important. Now it's working, okay? So my voice is right. And then to end up this part and give the next session. So we have a lot of challenges and next steps. Next step is that tomorrow you all are invited to our second mocap evacuation. So the community said, we want to lead it. Everybody's invited, all the partners, but we are the ones who are going to lead it. Because in a real situation, you're not going to be here. Firefighters are not going to be here at the landslide moment. They're going to arrive later. So we're going to take the time of how much time it takes for the fire is what we call the 1, 2, 3. So that's been part of a learning process and recognition of all the things that we still need to improve. An essential question, what happens after a real evacuation? We have a lot of people from the Pacific that can tell us, teach us what's been their real experience, the attention and recuperation that we're learning, that we still need a lot, and we need to integrate it to all the protection of people living in those areas. So to start the panel, we want to show you that in this collective construction process, oh, you see, I forgot part. We just need another part, which is the knowledge transference. The project is over, then what is next? And now we're going to show you a, a surprise that it was made by them. So what we done is to make a statistical analysis with all the information that we have of the city. And to that, we would like to see those areas of Medellin that is very likely to have a landslide. We have reference data, we have the threat map from 2014, and also we have databases of landslide of the city, which is a unique information in the world. We have information about the great visits, we have information about Desinventar from CIMA, and also we have information about landslides that have happened through time that we identify with satellite images. What we do is to combine all this information to learn where or what characteristics happen in those areas, where there is a landslide risk. And to this, we generate a statistical model that tells information about the slope of the terrain, aspect, curve, distance of the hydro water sources, where are the geotechnic areas, and we have rainfall areas from the Seattle. With this generate a statistical model, and we can predict for all the municipality of Medellin. In this area, we have the northeast. In red, you can see the areas with a high probability of landslide. This information, we use it and we combine it with the maps that we saw before of the population, and the idea is to identify those areas of the Medellin city that are highly populated and that are very likely of landslide. What we did was to identify about 32 areas where we recommend that it would be possible installation of an early alert system for those areas. We obtain information about the urban density, slope, information about green areas, and other parameters, and together with our partners from the universities, we select those where it is possible to implement a system similar to the one of Bello Oriente. We wanted to show, this is the map in red. It's one of the most dangerous areas, and you can see in white constructions of the infrastructure networks. This is one of the highly populated areas and the high possibility of landslide. One analysis we made to unify all this information, and in this graph, all the priority areas where we recommend that we continue installing an early alert system based the order from higher to less probability. And there's an 80% of probability of a landslide. And in this variable is showing how many population is there. In yellow, we have vulnerable and not vulnerable. And the example that I show is this area that is just about 70% and a big population, a lot of population living there. So it's those one of the areas that we recommend to transfer a knowledge system there. So now I would like to give the mic to John.
So for the next step, we wanted to know where the city could spend the money they have the best. So basically test where do we have the highest efficiency of installing such a system? Where can we, with the same amount of money, protect the most people? That's the question. So what we did is we used the great data we had from the remote sensing, the susceptibility, and the buildup of the area, where are houses, where are not. And we used the experiences we gathered from Bello Oriente. So how much does a sensor cost? How much does it cost to install? What is the sensor density we need? And we used this information, we combined it for the different hotspots that we have defined and calculated the amount of money we need to protect a person with our system. So what you see here now is, again, we have the different hotspots that have been defined before, and now you can see here how much it costs to put a person in this area under protection with our system. This calculation obviously is only a model, so you cannot use this number and transfer it exactly into real life, but you can do a comparative study. So you know, oh, in these areas, it's much cheaper to protect a person than it is in these areas. So that's the idea behind the whole thing. Just to be clear about it, we only looked at the LoRa system, and it's only the cost for installing the sensor, buying the sensors and installing the sensors. It's not the maintenance, not a long year thing, so it's just that. So for instance, if we look at the hotspot that has been highlighted before, this would be the number 4. It has an area of 45 hectares, and yeah, in average, it will cost only around about 42,000 pesos to protect a person with our system in this area. So this study is really done to maybe show where can we spend the money best in Medellin when we transfer the system. Obviously, we first have to prove that the system works, so this is something, still a vision for the future, but that's really what we strive for. We would really like, if we can prove that the system works, and in the next half year, we see that we have good results with the system, we would think that it would be a great opportunity to transfer it first within the city. And in order to do that, we think it should be integrated in the risk management process of the city of Medellin. So there already is the Colombian Decree 1807 from 2014, which basically describes how risk is defined, or how risk is determined in a very high quality in the different areas of Medellin. And if you do that, usually right now you have two options if to react to high risk areas. You define the high risk areas with the degrees. So what can you do? Right now, you can either do mitigation measures, you build retention walls, or you do some technical constructions to reduce the risk, or you have to do land planning. You have to change the land planning and maybe restrict the use of the area, maybe even make people leave this area. And we feel that with the things that we have provided you in this project, we have another option now. We should integrate it so you not only can either do technical measures or remove people or prohibit land use, you can now also install the warning system, and maybe this gives this just gives you another option to how to handle the risk in these areas. And obviously, in order to do that, you have to define standards. You have to exactly define how this should be implemented in the risk management process of the city of Medellin. So that, I think, is the goal for the next years, probably. And obviously, we would really like if this model would work in Medellin, and maybe this will be really then a model city, not just for other cities in Colombia, but maybe also for other cities in the world. So thank you very much. We conclude the presentation now, and I think we start with the panel where we can continue with the discussion about exactly these points. Thank you very much.
Bueno, vamos a continuar con el video que armamos para comunicar el proyecto.
Es importante aclarar que este fue un video desarrollado por iniciativa de los artistas de Bello Oriente para el video, entonces fue algo, para nosotros fue una gran sorpresa cuando lo enviaron, así que esperamos que lo disfruten como nosotros lo hicimos. Por ahora no, entonces esperen un momentico.
Hola, soy Alegría.
Y yo Justo, y te mostraremos
el sistema participativo de alertas tempranas ante deslizamientos.
InfoRisk.
¡Acompáñanos! El suelo del barrio Bello Oriente está asentado sobre anteriores deslizamientos. Está compuesto principalmente por la piedra dunita, una roca volcánica muy fracturada, porosa y descompuesta. Es muy frágil. Por eso son frecuentes los deslizamientos de tierra en la zona.
Por ese motivo, se han instalado en nuestra comunidad una serie de dispositivos que nos informarán sobre cualquier riesgo de deslizamiento de tierra en la zona.
Incli o inclinómetro. Siente los movimientos del suelo y en su cubierta tiene un panel solar que le da energía.
Don Cable Extenso. Se encuentra enterrado a 50 centímetros del suelo, es muy largo y nos avisa si hay algún movimiento del suelo en tiempo real.
Lora. Es un sensor colocado en las paredes de algunas casas y nos alertan cuando se inclinan.
Estación Central. Recibe la información de todos los sensores y los envía a la comunidad a través de una aplicación.
En la aplicación encontrarás toda la información que necesitas saber para prevenir y participar.
Búscanos en nuestras redes sociales.
So now we're going to go to the panel. So my name is Isabella Basumbril. I'm part of the InfoRisk team from the Urban Study Center from AFIT. We're very happy today of being here, presenting a close, or we still have a couple of months, very intense months coming, but it's very nice to see how all this process took place and how all this process was integrated with all these actors. So once again, thanks a lot for being here. In the debate panel, we're going to talk about the results of the project, but also we're going to talk about challenges into the future, about next steps, and all the transference process. The risk management in Colombia and in many places of the world is a responsibility of all the actors in the cities. So that's why it's very important for this panel to invite representatives from the government, the community, and civil society organizations and the academy as well. So we invite, on behalf of the GREC, the representative, the GREC director, Asania Pinto Altamiranda, environmental engineers and masters in sustainable development. That it's support from that GREC, that she apologizes that she's not going to be able to be here today. We invite Tita, Lujanet Mejia, leader of the risk management unit from the metropolitan area. Thanks, Tita, for being here. Also, from the community, we're very pleased to invite Johnny Alexander Restrepo Monsalve. He's member of the Paloma Foundation and he's part of Bello Oriente. It's very important to mention that the video, Johnny made it together with another very interesting artist from Bello Oriente. So we also invite Andis Paola Guzman. She's a sociologist from Universidad Social de Colombia. She has a master's degree also from the same university. She's been a central part together with Alejandro. They're together from Tejerañas. It's been a central part in this project from the beginning, not only for the project, but also for all the support during the pandemic. So, Andy, thanks a lot for being here today. So we also invite our director of the project, Christian Berman. He's architecture and design professor, landscape from EGNIC in Hanover, and he's the director of this project. From the beginning, you're going to know a little bit more about him in his presentation. He's a very calm person, and he's been always transferring that peace and that good state. And also, the one that is everywhere, Catalina Garcia. She's a geologist engineer. She's the local coordinator of the Colombian team and supports of the InfoRisk project. She's president of the Untitled Chapter for the geology part. So where do I sit? I would sit here. So how you can tell, we have learned in risk management to adapt to situations. So that's why I'm sitting here. So I'm very happy to see you all here together. The truth is that It's been years of a lot of intensity, of a lot of learning. So what we thought for this closing panel, is to work asking a question to each representative, to each actor, and then, since we're not going to have a lot of time to open to questions, so please write down the questions. We'll give a couple of minutes to collect questions and ask a couple of questions from the audience at the end. So I'm going to start. I'm going to start with Degret. Usania, we are very interested in some of the topics, some of the most important topics, to know, in the experience of Degret, why it's important for Medellin to have a participatory early alert system, regarding landslides. Good afternoon to everybody. On behalf of Lara Duarte, unfortunately she couldn't be here, but I'm here representing her. So, regarding this project, it means a lot to the district, and especially for two important factors. Number one, which is cooperation. It helps us to strengthen the cooperation among the academy, the local government, and second, that is the community This will provide us an scenario where the community knows a lot more about what risk management is. That is a community that is going to be equipped not only with instruments, but also with knowledge, protocols, evacuation protocols, and all of that type of information that is important when it comes to an emergency. So to us, it's very important, and we hope to continue supporting this type of process. This is a pilot project. We, as a district, we have early alert systems when it comes to flooding or heavy rains. This is a pilot, and it's a first time that we will see how this mass landslide would happen and how to prevent and respond to it. So thanks a lot, Tanya. This year, risk management has been very, very busy in Medellin. So now, Lujanes, she represents AMBA, and AMBA is the one that leads the CIATA project. So we'd like to share with you vision in the future, to think about what you think would be the main sustainability challenges, and how to replicate it for this early alert system, but also how do you suggest those challenges should be covered? So those two questions. So special greetings to all. I think that the most important part is that we cannot disconnect a project from such an importance for the community, but also for science, because it's a pioneer in monitoring and generating early alerts because of landslide. The place where these could actually last in time and warranty, that many other generations continue contributing and making it to growth, is universities. And universities need to unite with all their knowledge to contribute with those differences, because here locally we have some universities that are stronger in some areas than others, or professors that have some specific interests. So I would believe that to invite universities to add to initiatives like this is going to guarantee that the scientific component and a social appropriation of that scientific knowledge could be transferred to the final user, which is the communities. We as CIATA, it takes about 10 years to emit the first alerts. And those 10 years is like, as happened in Medellin, when we had at first a metro system. The first was for 12 years to teach how to enter and get in and out of the train. And that culture was moved to different scenarios where in Colombia, when there's an elevators for visitors, you're going to tell you, let people out and it's going to be easier to get in. And we didn't have that measure system. So it's to understand here that for the community to not lose that expectation that they have in the project, it can take a lot of years before having where we have to aim for the letter to be yellow, orange, we need to learn, because it would happen in other years, and is that our forecasts were like they were now what happened. So the idea is that the community continue having those social process, that they are resilient and the exercise of the knowledge of the risk management, and that they let the academy to support and to have very good thresholds and have evacuation processes are supported based on scientific data, so the community do not lose credibility in the project. Right? As a matter of fact, you say something very important, Tita, because risk management, this process is led by several universities. Some universities are trying to first to generate a project that change a paradigm in the risk management, but also to start generating a cultural change of mindset, and that takes time, and that's okay. So now it's going to continue talking with the community and the organizations, and also from the community. Community from Bello Oriente has suffered a landslide in 2017. That's been well managed because that has avoided death and injured people. But Bello Oriente also received in 2018 this project. It's been a very long project, process of 4 years. So Johnny, as a member of the community and the foundation of Bello Oriente, tell us a little bit about that, of the cultural change, what learned lessons you obtained, the community obtained during last years. Okay, good morning to everybody, especially greetings. So I live in Bello Oriente since 2001. The territory since I was there hasn't presented a constant landslides, but there's been some landslides. So last year there was one in the lower part of the neighborhood. There was a landslide. But that was generated by some sewage water, and unfortunately, some houses collapsed, but nobody died. So what Isabel mentioned about the 2017 landslides, that no deaths occurred, was because that landslide was slow at the beginning, and part of the community realized it, and they started informing people and alerting the other inhabitants of the community that were nearby the landslide. Unfortunately, it happened during daytime, 1 p.m. So that provided the opportunity for a lot of people to leave the house fast enough. I think that the learnings from this project of this early alert system is community organization, the importance of the organization of the community, not only the learning from the project, but also we learned a lot from landslide in 2017. Very important to be together, to work together, not only to defend life, but also to defend the territory, because people that inhabit the territory, we love our neighborhood, we feel for it. We feel sad to know that the territory is in high risk of landslides, and I think that the biggest lesson is to be able to have a constant relation with that land and knowing that at any point we can suffer a landslide. So it's to have a different relation with the land. Also, another learning is how to mitigate the risks, because there are a lot of lakes, there are a lot of community pipelines that have some leakage, and that's some of the non-natural causes, human-made causes in the handling of the water. Sometimes we relax when there's a small leak, and that leakage is the one that could actually generate a landslide. The landslide of 2017 was because of that. It was because of some septic and some pipelines that were broken, but it wasn't because of an earthquake or because of heavy rains, because at that time we weren't in winter, so it was pipeline leakages. After that, a lot of leakages were stopped. There's still some leakages, but they were improved a lot. Thank you, Johnny. Yes, as a matter of fact, the risk, as we've seen in a lot of different maps, are presented in this morning. Not only Veg Oriente is exposed to a high risk, but there are other neighborhoods where Teheranias has been supporting the risk management and the community strengthening. So it's not only in the role of the support that we have obtained from you towards the project, but also a generic question: how to strengthen that community process, and what is the role of the social process. Now it works. The role is this one, and is that not only accompanying but supporting. Now this one, you see? From the community and from all the processes, there's a lot to cover and a lot to learn. But from the community, we have learned to manage different risks independently of how you call it. You call it heavy rains, landslide, mass movement, is to manage the risks and to have a city models that have been built without taking into account that about informality of construction, so neighbors that were unplanned because they had other ways to plan the construction. So the risk management has taught how to manage not expecting to a disaster, but how to live well on the territories. Because sometimes you have to be there or you decided to be there, but relation with the territories, relation with the water, the mountain, and that model of city get us to fight. Go on and get mad about the land because it's your fault because you were there in that slope. Like if you can take a decision of I'm going to live in the richest neighborhood of the city or in Belo Oriente, sometimes you don't have the decision and you have to go and live there. But part of these processes of articulating together is that a lot of that information, we didn't have access to it. We didn't have to read it because sometimes we've been excluded as well of the learning mechanisms to understand some data, but also that we are heard in the ways that we have actually managed risk, because the neighborhoods are next to water streams and slopes and mountains. And we need to learn how to manage the risk. And I think one of the roles, important roles, and of the exercise of articulating with this project is how sometimes it's easier for us to be seen from far away, and how people from far away say that part of their heart is here. Because sometimes people who are very close to us do not see us. So the role of the academy of the role of that cooperation that comes far away, and they saw it, and they saw us, and they see us on the borders, but sometimes not what the city wanted to see. So now risk management makes us visible because we are the neighborhoods that are collapsed. So now it's the nature that is placing us there in the center, and part of that role is to mention that we have also proposals. We not only have needs and problems, we have proposals. We're not static communities. We're not communities without ideas. We are communities that have proposals and actions on the territories. Some valid, others that we need to enter into a dialogue to heal the relation with the territory, but also how that exclusion has made that things are not done properly, but also take into account that neighborhoods, there are other risks behind the ones, the relation with the nature. And sometimes we have problems of hunger, access to rights. Case on Bello Oriente, for the ones that haven't been in Bello Oriente, to get to Bello Oriente, mobility is very complicated, and you're supposed to have the right to be able to get to downtown and to get to the neighborhood. And risk management is not waiting for disaster. If it happens, how do we handle in a way that not to have losses? We cannot stop the rain, we cannot stop the sky, we cannot stop the mountain, but we can bring debates and to say, hey, watch out with climate change, it's going to impact you the most, and it's going to impact the ones. We're going through economic crisis, a lot of crisis, and now in the climate change, we have a lot of time telling the mayor's office, hey, we need to do something beyond the emergency response, because you're not going to be, you don't have enough to respond to an emergency. I think the people from that group can say it. But how risk management is the risk of the territory, the risk of management of the territory, the manage of the risk, the manage of the area, the manage of the neighborhood, the manage of life, and based on the risk. So I think that's a little bit of to be able, not able to articulate actors, but also to articulate realities, intentions, and to bring on the table the wills. Oftentimes it's about thanks to wills that things happen, and to have the possibility that others that are able to see us from far away, they have understood that is the world. The world is together. What happens here is going to happen there. What happens there is going to happen here. To understand that we're united, and the community is the community of the planet. So we are united. Some with other different implications. Some people are going to be highly impacted because we have some historical depths from that development model. Others are going to have other capacities to respond, but since the organizations and communities, we need the capacity to manage in their territories. That's what I want to say. Okay. Clearly, our communities have a lot of actions to propose, and that's why it's important this participation of from the Academy. We have proposals. Christian has been our director of the project, and we would like to share with you what are the limits of that project. But it has some limits. So we'd like to share that with us. And in the future, there are going to be new projects, pilot projects. What changes will be introduced from the formulation of this project?
Thank you. Is it working? Okay. Thank you for the question. The limits of the project, I mean, you could talk a lot about it, but what I perceive as the biggest limit of academic project is time. That there's certain funding cycles that you get, and they are typically 3 years. And then a big, when you want to introduce innovation in a project like that, it's very limited. And you saw that we already got another year in order because of the special situation of the pandemic. But in order to have a change of how things work and an improvement, hopefully, and to test this, you need more time. So we got as far as we could, because then you can decide as an academic to say, I will not do a project like that, or I will do it. If I not do it, of course, there is no risk, but there's also no advancement. And so, yes, we did that project, and we knew that we have to work with all the actors in the field, if it's the community or the risk management authorities or the civil-based organization or the NGOs, in order to make it work. And now our biggest concern and our biggest limit is basically that at some point we have our funding runs out and we cannot do this intensity of work anymore. And we have to ensure that what we started with this early warning system can be continued and tested and further developed. You saw we had a lot of questions still, and we hope, and we have also the intent of the voiced intent of many actors that this project will continue in Colombia, and that we will learn more about it, that we see if it works, and as you saw, if it can be transferred to other locations. Is it useful for Medellin? And if not, what would you have to change in order to make it useful? Do you, in terms of the technical system, Dr. Singer was presenting that, for example, the horizontal cables that he installed, they were so intensely to install that he probably would not do it again, or do it together with some other infrastructure. So these are learnings that you can do in an academic project. And of course, this is a pilot project. And we will see in terms of the idea of having the project and the system, the technical system, as part of the daily life in the barrio. So you saw that we designed these benches and so on, and not have any black boxes out there that then the community doesn't know what they are for, and they are not part of the daily life in the barrio. So let's see if this idea works out, but you need more time to look at that. And I will love to come back to Colombia in the coming years and still be part of this, and also see how certain things develop. And then if you say, okay, there are certain things that work well in Bello Oriente, maybe we take them to another neighborhood. We take that out of it, but we don't do that. So this will be a very interesting process. And as we all know, humankind is constantly developing, going forward. We constantly change, Imagine how life was 30 years ago in Medellin. Already in 30 years, things have changed quite a bit. So we have to be part of the change and not only let it drive from outside a private profit interests, but we have to look at especially the topic of prevention that is still underdeveloped worldwide. And a warning system costs money to operate. And it's just part of, if society, if politicians are willing to shift priorities and spend money on this. I mean, budgets are always a political decision in terms of priorities. And I hope that when we see the Gutierrez wish to have in 5 years that every person who is vulnerable on this planet has the availability of an early warning system, that's a huge goal. So, and I can see that Medellin could be, there are 200,000 people at landslide risk, that you could be underway in terms of that direction. But what this warning system exactly will look like, this is just one test. And what will be proven to be useful and what can be afforded, and how the communities can be really integrated, because community is the first line of defense. I agree with Johnny, I agree with Andis, but also it was said by my other partners here on the podium. So this is, I think, whatever you do, in my eyes, what we learn from here is the first line of defense is the community.
Thanks a lot, Christian. And we are exactly testing. There's a pilot test. We're testing. And Catalina Garcia has been our coordinator. She's been kind of the heart of the project. And it's a project that has technical complexities, institutional, community, administrative, and a lot of topics. So we would like you to tell us about those challenges of this process, this beautiful process, as complex as it's needed. Tell us a little bit about the challenges and what is still needed to develop. Thanks a lot for the question. As I knew what the question was, you see, what we talk about, it's very complex. During almost 4 years, I select some specific ones that I hope that are for learning, and all of them are connected to the good things of the project. One of the main process is the multi-sector. To have so many actors, so many diverse actors working together. Diverse actors not only from nationalities, different languages, but also diverse limits. So to look and create those bridges to be in the shoes of the other person, to understand that the other person, not only it comes to some conditions of the entities that represent from the realities, personal realities, but also if they continue there, it's because they want it, and that's what we mentioned, people in the middle. But to work with people is one of the most difficult challenge. It's easier to stay in the academy behind a screen, writing articles, but it's also to value the effort that others people do to be there, and even more, valuing that many actors, as mentioned, are being bumping heads because we had difference, but upon difference that we build changes. But if the other one is in front of me 3 years, continuing accepting and being in front of me, talking to me, trying to resolve problems, to recognize the effort of the other party, and even more, knowing that the Colombian actors are, because they don't have a work relation, they're there because it's an agreement of wills. So that's a lot more valuable because they're donating their time to find an answer, to find how to build a future city. Another big challenge has been to build trust with our community and with other actors. And it's because to be able to build that trust, so you have to open your soul, you have to open your heart, you have to be exposed, you have to get close and to understand there are some very difficult realities that is being there, is to feel the realities of the other person, is to see that there are things that you cannot resolve, that you cannot, and then feel frustrated. This this small action, I'm gonna change the reality. There are thousands of other risks that we cannot solve. So it's, if I want to build trust, I need to dive in, and the more trust you build, it's a lot more. The more closer you get, more respect you need to have, and more exposed are you as a person for a lot of things to happen. But also, it's thanks to those type of things that when you understand things are not part of a survey or of an interview, you say you not put the little the chair there. There's no light, and if there's no light, then the gangsters are gonna make territory controlled, and then we have problem with some also those difficulties from the territories. And the last two, one that has been fundamental as part of the project, we don't have professionals to guide us in the process. We always think about like the climate personnel, what's going to support us, but it's a lack of social professionals and our colleagues from Tejerañas, also Cambianos, they were essential in helping us to understand that process that is so complex and so big. And the last, I think the main challenge is that the message actually gets that alert has to be as early as possible, that we can avoid disasters, that help us avoid the event. When he mentioned, our geology teacher, Mario Flores, says, landslides in Medellin, all of them have a social component. As part of his experience of decades, he said, I never saw a landslide, natural landslide. So he said, there's always the human hand activated. So we concentrate on that, think about the prevention. So possibly we're going to reduce the risk a lot more. So thanks to the first round of questions, then we wanted to open the mic to the audience to talk to the panelists or to the presenters. So we are willing to answer any questions that you may have and to be able to have a debate. So I don't know if there's a question right here. So please introduce yourself and ask the question. This is being recorded. Thanks a lot for the presentation. My name is Isabel as well, Isabel Perez. I'm geographic and I'm doing a master's degree in geospatial space. And my question is connected to that, to those perspectives that I think is very nice. The last presentation was about the possibility that the pilot will go beyond and you have to cover a lot of challenges and higher articulations from the institution. And that's where I see that is hard to advance in that area from my thesis of Comuna 8. It's hard to cross, although the barrier of the multiple actors, and to work in a joint effort and to recognize that all those actors played a role that could be taken horizontally in the execution of some practices. But the proposals that ones leave there, that is it's important what the institution brings in the academy. It's important to take into account. So my question is, how do you see the possibility of that stopping a pilot in Bello Oriente, and that it's possible to replicate it in so many areas of Medellin and the country that they need an earlier alarm system because of their geographic location? Thanks, Isabel. So, who's going to answer? Tita can answer? So, the challenge here is also to recognize, number one, that we have some legal difficulties because all the institutions, we have a mission and some scope. We like to cover a lot of things, but the functions of the grid are concentrated on response, a territory, and some specificity. But the metropolitan area has one of its functions to articulate the municipalities and those entities that work in risk management. And the example has been Seattle. Seattle would exist if Affit University for more than 50 years been supporting us, not only to the implementation, but also the follow-up and the projection of this project of science and technology. So we need to generate that marriage between the entities of the state that are the ones that have the institutional presence and the ones that have the legit presence in the territory. And after those actors are visible and are recognized, universities could actually provide us support. So the diagnosis and the scientific part actually arrive to the last part of the chain, which is the social process and community processes. In Colombia, we still need a lot of social appropriation of the scientific knowledge. We just started talking about that. And we are calling the things by their names. I think it was very beautiful, the video, because it talks with all the technology, but also with local words for people to understand what that is about. Scientific people, we need to forget about fancy words, and we need to forget about those technical labels. So a person that needs to evacuate, they know that it could be, I don't know, use the word from the communities. So if you tell a person a mass movement, they're not going to understand. We need to call the things by their names and to be able to transfer that to the base. Then let's not forget about, then not lose the hope. It's with 4 years we have to. They started. They given us 4 years of fantastic knowledge, and we thank them for that. And now the task is on our hands. And now that we're here, that we have 45 minutes with the difficulty of transportation to arrive there. They have to, I don't know how many hours they have to fly here to be able to get to Bello Oriente. So we have the responsibility, social responsibility, and I close with that. We need to motivate students in the academy. This cannot be just a problem of the state. If more students motivate to continue studying those specific cases, this could be replicated. The money of the state is small and the needs are huge. The risks that you mentioned are infinite, and maybe to this type of risks is the ones that less resources they allocate, because we just think about, we get the resources when the landslide happened. So if the university also captures the attention of students and we learn and we involve them in the investigations, for sure we can make that social work, but to help to this to replicate in all the territories equally needed as Bello Oriente. Thanks, Tita. So we have another question. Please name and question. Good afternoon. My name is Santiago. Thanks a lot for your presentations. My question is a question that's very specific. Right now, what have you thought about 3 or 4 years? Who's going to cover the maintenance costs of that project? I don't know, from the GRE, from the Academy, from the Medellin Mayor's office. I would like to know who's going to cover 3 years from now? Who's going to finance the maintenance of the project? Thanks a lot. Back to Tita. Well, we have had some conversations last year to try to clarify and to revise from those skills how we're going to do it. But a project like this cannot be abandoned. This is an institutional commitment, and the Medellin city, that is the one that has the responsibility of generating the early alerts, already show the will of the mayor through his risk management office to allocate resources so we can actually keep the project alive. We're looking about how to transfer that knowledge and to whom. It's going to be an alliance with the area, an alliance with the university, but the commitment is clear. It's not that they go and then we're just going to forget about the 4 years because we're not going to resolve who received it. So now there is a willingness from the mayor and the indication for next year, in the budget for next year, so we can make those adjustments. Also, it's been beautiful to build the budget, because one thing is what we experiment and do, and the other thing is the learning about how much it costs to maintain it. So that's why it's important that the authorities are involved as well as the university. They're going to be there putting up those hidden costs that sometimes we do not see in a pilot project. But do not worry, but it's not going to disappear. And today we're here, and we're going to receive this son. We're going to receive this baby, and this is the next step, and we are here ready to put our heart and souls and of course the economic resources for it. Santiago, thanks a lot for your question and thanks a lot for your answer, Tita. We have our neighbor list. Good afternoon, my name is Luis Inés and I live in Palomar. I'm a neighbor from Bello Oriente, Palomar, and I'm going to thank all the Catalina, and especially that arrived to my neighborhood with this nice project. I feel very happy, and since I've been working, I sleep well, I feel okay, I feel protected, and when it rains, I look at the cell phone when we get it's raining and all that, and it participates a lot, sending a lot of messages to the WhatsApp group. And I thank you a lot because to me it's nice. It's very nice to have you there in this project. We're very lucky with the only neighborhood, Bello Oriente, from the city of Medellin. And well, I'm very happy that we are going well. In my neighborhood, there are some people that are close-minded and they say like bad things about it, but they continue going ahead. They don't care, and that's good. That's good. Thank you, and let's keep moving ahead. Thank you, Luis. Good morning, my name is Juan Felipe Flores. I'm a professor from Politécnico Jaime Sasse Cadavid Risk Management. Before asking the question, all the congratulations. I love you, Ricardo. All the results as well. Shinobi. So, something that Tita mentioned regarding to universities. From the Polytechnical institution, we've been doing some work about risk management, people with disabilities, especially visual disability. There is a complex thing when it comes to the inclusion of risk management. That is another part, another side that is complex as well. I would think that it's important that universities we unite and integrate. What happens is that unfortunately, many times, the opposite happens. The university nudges at the institutions and the institutions do not answer. Or I don't know if it's a part of that policy. These universities yes and these others no. So we need to do a very deep work to make an evaluation by institution because it's a reality. Every educational institution in Medellin, Antioquia, they're doing something. So I believe that it has to be, we need to analyze, okay, let's do a diagnosis process about what institution is doing. That's number one. Now the question is, this work, it's going to be a transfer of knowledge. There's going to be a public document. I mean, something, because I think that it's important to do this. We need to spread this and we need to share this with all the educational institutions, not only universities, but also we need to take this down to schools and higher schools, because this gets a momentum, and something that Prophet Carlos mentioned, and is, let's say that it was an intervention in one, but the risk is systemic. One thing comes to others, so that's important. And if we don't take this down to high schools, those are the ones that need to do all the process of the new generation of the risk management. We're not going to have a future, a momentum in the future. So I would like to know if you're going to do that, and that's it. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Juan Felipe. It works. Okay. Thanks a lot for your words. Summarizing, I mean, this is a part of the transfer of knowledge. And these last months, we're going to concentrate on better orienting, continuing strengthening the community capabilities. We're going to have a social professional that is going to support us, going to each organization, going to the schools. To us, they're essential, and kids are fundamental actors. They've been excellent at spreading the word. So yes, there's going to be a transfer of knowledge inside the neighborhood because of the ones that we work with the communities, that it doesn't matter how many workshops you do, you're never going to reach out all the population, but that's our approach. And as John David Morris mentioned, we're generating also manuals for these to be able to be replicated, not only from the GRED, but also we are very interested about universities, private and public universities. So they experiment, they get, they change and modify and improve the sensors taken to every single territory and the social process as well. We're going to continue, but how we said, Informatry gets until December. The early alert system continues and continues, and we hope that Haciata continues, and if it's articulated or not, but in that process of constant learning, together with recognizing that we need the support from the government for sure. So without the support from the government, it's impossible to continue with it. And I highlight another things that personally value of the project. From day number one, we talked about that this should generate a transfer of knowledge. All the activities of the academy are limited to the 3 or 4 years that the project lasts and by. That's it. Picture beautiful, and instruments damaged. But this project has been very important because it's been one of the most difficult parts to look for that transfer of knowledge that depends on a lot of factors. Not only that the government says, I'm going to place the money on that. It has a lot of complexity. It's to take and to welcome something that came from outside with the development, and that's what generated that it could be received the support of multiple Colombian adapted to the reality of the territory. So, but that's again to recognize the efforts. But we still need a lot to do, but we have a good foundation. I know you want to compliment something. Yes, a lot of collecting all the question is what would do this to be replicated or continue, and life and the climate change, because it's not just what happened there. We have 2 years that it rains and rains. That is not only a sector that could actually collapse, but it's all the house on the mountains. So it's the same reality, and it's telling us, okay, we need to be faster, we need to respond faster. That the institution responds, like the academy responds, the response from the community. So it brings a lot of challenges, and also it's not only about the budget, but also how to understand the risk management. Is the management of life, because it's the way that we relate socially and communitatively with the mountain, and that's what taught by Bello Oriente. Bello Oriente is the mountain that feels. If we forget that the mountain feels and the mountain is there, we're gonna depend upon that it rains or not. But it's to get the habits. So it's turn the Sierra and to see. So the first thing is to start getting the habit of how to read the information, and now how to read or what's all the sensors going to tell us, but not to forget that if I see the crack, I don't need the sensor. I see the crack and I just take a picture of it. But also to tell the mayor's office, hey, it's not the grid comes once the landslide happened, and it's not only a responsibility of that grid, and that was possible. She just mentioned we need to ready to sit down, because the risk management and disasters at the end shows the problem of the development models. because some neighborhoods collapse and others don't, or because there's a response to some neighborhoods and others no, and why ones have rich management and others don't. And that goes beyond the technical debates, is to think about that the community is not only for the ones that it has to organize, because problems organize us, but this belongs to everybody. If mountains collapse, then what's going to happen? So we get to downtown then. But so we have to come here, and not that the ones here could actually look to the mountain. And I think the climate change places there, and it brings a challenge that we need to connect to the way that the nature talks to us, that could talk to us from all these instruments and all this process of knowledge, but also from say, okay, it's not nature with intention, it's how we can actually respond to manage the risks. We're not going to have rain, we're not going to stop nature process, but we can actually make sure that those processes do not affect us. So I think that at the end, what's going this allowed to continue is that we have to do with the wheels, and that the climate change is telling us, or we do something about it, or we do something about it. So I think that's the principle. Think just a final observation from Christian, and we have to close because of time.
Maybe very one short observation to your question regarding the children. We all know that the next generation is crucial. It has always been in humankind. We just have to learn to do how we do this. And one interesting observation in the project was that when we started to combine the technical with the social, that when like a drilling machine showed up on the site and started to drill a hole, that it is explained to the people who live around and the children who walk by. This experience-based learning is incredible and strong. And I think what we still do too much is that we teach in classrooms, and we need to get much more out. And that's what I'm doing also with my students now more. It's experience-based learning, not just showing images, not just talking, but going out there, looking, seeing.
Thanks a lot, Christians, and thanks a lot to everybody for being here. Thanks for all the people, the Greg, and the community of the Organizations Academy. Thanks to all for being here. Thanks to the translator for helping for the translation and making everything possible and translating all. And especially to the Multimedia Center of it that has been with us and has answered all the challenges of the morning. Also, I'd like to thank all the universities and all of you. Thanks a lot for being here.